I never thought owning a quiet mountain cabin would turn into a full-blown legal battle, but that's exactly what happened. It started with a knock at the door, then another, and another. Before I knew it, the HOA security, who basically act like 1A cops, had stormed my property 7 times in just a few months. No warning, no real reason. Just loud demands, flashing lights, and threats about violations that didn't even exist. I'm not talking about some wild party house. This was a peaceful retreat I bought to escape the noise, not get dragged into it. At first, I tried to stay calm, play by the rules, and figure things out. But every time I asked for answers, I hit a wall. The harassment kept getting worse. They cited me for things like grass too tall and unauthorized woodpile. I couldn't believe it. Then I found out something that changed everything. These so-called HOA cops were operating way beyond what the law allowed. That's when I decided to fight back. I filed a lawsuit, not just to protect my own rights, but to stop them from pushing around other people like this. And guess what? The case exploded. I didn't just win. I took $2 million straight from their budget. But the craziest part, what they did after the verdict, that's where things really got out of control. After the verdict, I expected things to finally quiet down. I figured the HOA would back off, maybe even issue some kind of apology, or at least pretend like they learned a lesson. But instead, it felt like I'd kicked a hornet's nest. Within a week, strange cars started showing up near my cabin, unmarked, parked just out of view, and every time I stepped outside, I had this feeling, like someone was watching me. It wasn't paranoia. I later found out one of the board members actually lived nearby and was monitoring my behavior, reporting back to the rest of the HOA. The whole situation started to feel personal. I dug deeper into the HOA records, board meeting notes, budgets, enforcement logs, and what I found shocked me. They weren't just targeting me. There was a clear pattern. Cabin owners who lived full-time in the community, especially the ones who spoke up or asked questions, were always the first to get cited. They kept the pressure on by using these so-called patrols, which weren't even official law enforcement, just hired security acting like they had real authority. That's when I realized this wasn't about rules, it was about control. And the $2 million hit, that didn't slow them down. In fact, what they did next almost pushed me to leave everything behind. I started talking to other cabin owners in the area, people who'd been quietly dealing with the same harassment for years. One couple had security cameras ripped down after they caught HOA patrols trespassing on their land. Another guy got fined for hanging a wind chime that didn't match the approved exterior decor. It wasn't just me. This was a pattern, and it was growing. The HOA wasn't protecting the neighborhood. They were using their power to control it, like some twisted version of a small-town sheriff's office that no one voted for. I found out that several board members had close ties to the private security company they hired. Yep, the same one that kept storming onto my property. It raised serious questions about where the HOA fees were really going. When I brought this up during a public board meeting, they shut me down in under 2 minutes and threatened to fine me for being disruptive. That moment made it crystal clear. They weren't just enforcing rules, they were hiding something. The deeper I looked, the more it felt like this wasn't about property violations at all. It was about silence. About making sure people like me, people who asked too many questions, would either fall in line or move out. And the closer I got to the truth, the more dangerous things started to feel. Things really started spiraling the night I got home and found my cabin door cracked open. Nothing was missing, but everything felt off. A drawer that was always shut was slightly open. My trail camera near the back gate had been turned to face a tree. I reported it, but the local sheriff's office just shrugged, saying there was no sign of forced entry. Meanwhile, the HOA board claimed they had no idea what I was talking about. That night, I barely slept. I started carrying a flashlight and recording everything, every sound, every movement outside. The tension around the neighborhood was rising too. A neighbor who had once spoken up suddenly stopped answering my calls. Another told me he'd received an anonymous letter warning him to choose his battles wisely. What had started as a dispute over ridiculous HOA rules had clearly turned into something bigger. This wasn't about my grass being too long. It was about fear, power, and keeping people quiet. Then came the packet. No return address. Inside was a thick envelope of internal HOA documents, emails between board members, invoices from the security company, even notes that mentioned my name and cabin number directly. Someone on the inside had sent it. That was the moment I knew this fight was far from over. In fact, the most intense part was just about to begin. At first, I thought the packet was the break I needed, the kind of evidence that would finally bring everything into the light. But the deeper I went through those documents, the more disturbing things got. One email, dated months before the lawsuit, talked about creating a paper trail on my property. Another mentioned neutralizing future legal threats. My name was circled on a printed map with handwritten notes beside it, like observe yard activity and confirm visitor ID. That wasn't just creepy, it felt targeted. And whoever had sent this to me clearly wanted me to see it, but didn't want to be found out. I tried to trace the sender. Nothing. No fingerprints. No digital trail. Just a P.O. box in a nearby town that turned out to be empty and closed 2 weeks earlier. And that's when the second twist hit. My case had triggered something much bigger than a neighborhood grudge. I got a call from a former HOA treasurer who'd quietly moved out of state. She said the board had been using enforcement funds to pay bonuses to themselves and giving hush contracts to security staff. She warned me that people higher up were getting nervous. Right after that call, my internet went down for 3 straight days. A text showed up, someone I never called. When I asked for ID, he just smiled and said, "Just making sure you're still connected." The tension had reached its peak, and I knew it was time to take everything to court once and for all. Armed with a packet of documents, the testimonies from neighbors, and all the shady evidence I had uncovered, I thought I had them cornered. I filed another lawsuit, this time targeting not just the HOA, but the security company they had been using as a front for their illegal activities. It was a long shot, but I felt like this was the only way to expose the corruption. When the day in court finally arrived, I walked in ready for the fight in my life. I had no idea what the HOA would pull next. The courtroom was tense, with the board members sitting smugly at the front, but something was off. The lawyer they brought in looked too calm, too confident, almost like he had been expecting this moment for weeks. I was about to present my evidence when the twist came, something I never saw coming. The judge suddenly paused the proceedings and asked to speak privately with my lawyer. A few minutes later, the news hit. The judge had been quietly investigating the HOA for months. Apparently, there was a much bigger conspiracy at play. The HOA's actions weren't just local. They were part of a wider scheme involving several similar organizations across the state, all funneling money into a secret fund. The worst part, the judge had been quietly working with the same former HOA treasurer who'd contacted me. They had planned to take the entire operation down from the inside. The shock wasn't just the discovery of this grander scheme, it was that I had unknowingly walked straight into their trap. The moment I filed that second lawsuit, I had become the key to cracking open the whole thing. And just as the truth was about to unravel, I got one final message. "We knew you'd be the one to crack it open, but now you're in too deep. Good luck and stay safe." The message was signed by someone I'd never heard of before. My fight was far from over. In fact, it had only just begun. I was left in a whirlwind of uncertainty after that message, but this time I wasn't backing down. I had a choice: walk away or go deeper into the heart of the corruption. With the support of the former treasurer and some brave neighbors, I pushed forward, uncovering the full scale of the HOA's operations. It wasn't just about controlling one community, it was about controlling dozens across the state. They had been skimming off property fees, using intimidation tactics, and laundering money through fake fines. It took months of gathering evidence, but we finally had them. In the end, the entire network of corrupt HOA boards was dismantled. The security company was shut down, and the officials who thought they were untouchable faced charges. The $2 million they had tried to defend wasn't enough to cover their crimes, and they were left with nothing. As for me, I didn't just win my cabin back, I got my peace of mind. The system that had terrorized me for so long was exposed, and the community I had fought for could finally breathe. Looking back, it wasn't just about fighting for my property. It was about standing up to those who thought they could use fear and power to control us. And in the end, truth and justice won.